thinking better and thinking together about life's most important issues. A place to finally meet in the middle, to think freely and reasonably about the big questions of life. This is Thinker Sensitive. Welcome to another episode of Thinker Sensitive. My name is Ryan Ragazine, and I am honored to be your host. The founder of Stoicism was a man by the name of Zeno. Zeno of Citium, to be exact. Zeno was born about 300 years before Christ. According to tradition, Zeno lived a rather austere existence. He was said to be oblivious or even somewhat impervious to external conditions. Though originally from Cyprus, he wound up in Athens due to a shipwreck. While in Athens, Zeno was exposed to several different philosophical schools and traditions. Over time, he would develop his own ideas and his own theories. He taught these ideas from the painted porch in the public marketplace of Athens. The classical Greek word for porch is stoa, and this is why the philosophy of Zeno of Citium is referred to as Stoicism. Unfortunately, none of Zeno's personal writings survive times of antiquity. Our knowledge of his philosophy comes from subsequent Stoic writers. Zeno emphasized three main things: logic, physics, and ethics. For Zeno, logic creates sound methods for pursuing truth. Physics examines the inherent order and design of the cosmos. And ethics teaches us how to live rightly in the cosmic order. Stoicism is founded on two basic metaphysical principles. Number one, materialistic pantheism, and number two, strict determinism. The former denotes that the material universe is God, and God is the material universe. In this theological conception, God is the impersonal logos, the mind or soul that designs and orders, superintends the natural laws and physical constants of the universe. Not necessarily from behind the universe, nor even from within or from without, but as the physical or material universe. The latter denotes that all events and occurrences are predetermined and fixed within the cosmic order of things. In this philosophical conception, all being is subject to fate. All things are destined to be, are ordered by the cosmic organizing principle of the universe. One of the most famous philosophical descendants of Zeno was a Stoic thinker by the name of Epictetus. Epictetus was a contemporary of the apostles of Jesus. He was tragically born into a life of slavery, quite possibly suffering great physical abuse at the hands of his Roman owner. As a teenager, he was permitted to study under a popular Stoic master, and was soon freed from slavery. After being banished from Rome with several other philosophers by Emperor Domitian because of alleged resistance to his policies, Epictetus spent the second half of his life teaching in somewhat obscure settings and humble surroundings. Similar to his philosophical forerunner Zeno, Epictetus lived a plain and simple existence, even a monkish way of life. When examining their individual histories and their personal stories, it's easy to see how the unique experiences and peculiar backgrounds of these two men influence their philosophies. Even if you don't know the ins and outs of Stoic philosophy, you are probably familiar with what the word Stoic denotes. Someone who is Stoic is impassible, unemotional, indifferent, apathetic, resigned, ascetic, austere, Spartan, and even fatalistic. One could argue that these characteristics succinctly sum up the histories and life stories of these two Stoic figures. For example, Zeno could have easily developed his notion of fate after his fateful shipwreck essentially destined him to a life of philosophy in Athens. Likewise, the enslavement and banishment of Epictetus might have been the main factors that led him to develop both the value of living in emotional and psychological freedom from bondage to external factors on one hand, and the benefit of living a simple and minimalistic existence on the other hand. In the histories and philosophies of Zeno and Epictetus, then, we see that our personal experiences often shape our personal beliefs. Like many other philosophies, Stoicism is a perspective on reality that directly informs the way that one lives one's life. The Stoic way of life, or the Stoic mode of being, is grounded in Stoic metaphysics, in materialistic pantheism, and strict determinism. Here we see the right and proper relationship between theology/philosophy and morality/ethics. Our worldviews and our belief systems should have a direct influence on our lifestyles and our behaviors. The Stoic way of life can be summarized in several ethical maxims. Most of these come straight from an ancient document called the Manual, in which some of the most fundamental ethical teachings of Epictetus were written down and recorded by his personal disciple Arian. The following list is a personal paraphrase of what I subjectively perceive to be the main ethical recommendations therein. Number 1, recognize what is within your control and recognize what is outside of your control. The former should be your sole focus in life. All concern for the latter should be discarded. You can't always control how other people around you feel, but you can control how you feel. Likewise, you can't control the actions of others, but you can control how you respond to the actions of others. This is where Stoic apathy and detachment come into play. Don't be affected or influenced or shaken or disturbed by things that lie outside of your control, including other people. Instead, let those things go and give them up. Number 2, pursue the good that is within your control. Intelligence, bravery, justice, self-restraint, fortitude, patience, contentment, resignation, acceptance, tranquility, and peace of mind. And avoid the bad that is within your control. Lust, envy, jealousy, grief, fear, distress, turmoil, and disappointment. Number 3, suppress or greatly regulate your desires. Don't be a wishful or desirous person. Don't desire things that you don't have. Certainly not things that are outside of your control. In 20th and 21st century America, we might encourage people to dream big, to chase your dreams, and to make your dreams come true. Stoicism, on the other hand, says, let's rein those dreams in a little bit. If you don't, you're setting yourself up for some major disappointments down the line, the Stoics would say. Number 4, distance yourself emotionally from things that are fickle and fleeting, including human beings, even loved ones. This will help protect you from the immense grief and pain that are experienced when you lose people dear to you. Number 5, hold all things with an open hand. View your possessions as things that you are renting, not as things that you own. That way, if you lose your possessions, the loss won't bother you all that much. Number 6, resign yourself to fate. Accept whatever happens. Accept your lot in life. Don't waste your time wishing that your life was different. Don't waste your life dreaming about alternative possibilities and alternate realities. Don't tease yourself and make yourself anxious by hoping for a better life. This will only bring discontentment and dissatisfaction. Number 7, accept all of the key choices and decisions that you've made throughout your life and live into them. Again, don't ever second guess your decisions or question your choices, thinking about what might or what could have been. This will only bring you distress and regret. Number 8, live freely rather than slavishly. Don't allow anyone to own you or to possess you or to have power over you. Liberate yourself from the emotional control or mental oppression of others. For example, if someone is publicly slandering and sullying your good name, this might bother you and upset you. In such cases, the emotional distress that you experience is a form of bondage. By allowing yourself to experience inner turmoil in the heat of the moment, the slanderer in question is, in some sense, controlling you and exerting power over you. If you truly let go of the things that you can't control, however, the things that are external to you, then you won't be affected by the unjust actions and unjust words of your enemies. This will allow you to be impervious to the offenses of others. Number 9, prioritize character over reputation. Character is internal and thus is within your control. Reputation is external and thus is outside of your control. Finally, number 10, don't depend on others. Instead, depend on yourself. Be self-sustaining and self-dependent. Again, if you depend on things that you can't control and that you can't produce, you are going to be disappointed. All right, let me give my personal appropriation of Stoic philosophy. Before I list some commendations and some corrections, I want to mention a couple topics that I'm unfortunately not going to tackle on this episode. This is not the time or the place to give a detailed critique of the metaphysics of ancient Stoicism. As you know, I am a theistic theologian. not a pantheistic theologian. And there are many reasons for this: theological reasons, philosophical reasons, logical reasons, and moral and ethical reasons. But I can't present those reasons here. As you also may know, I am a personal proponent of libertarian free will and rational freedom, as opposed to either divine determinism or biological and electrochemical determinism. Now, if you are listening to this podcast and you are a pantheist or a determinist, my free and rational choice of theism over pantheism and libertarian free will over determinism may offend your personal sensibilities, just as much as your free and rational choice of pantheism, or ironically determinism, may offend mine. If we both were to heed the prudent and timely words of the Stoics, however, then we would try our best to develop the thickest and toughest skin possible, so that we won't be so easily offended, shaken, and insulted by the beliefs, opinions, and disagreements of others. That would be a great concrete application of Stoic philosophy. With that said, there's a lot of practical wisdom and prudent advice in Stoicism, as long as we stay clear of some of the extremes, incorporating the recommendations of Epictetus into our lives in a nuanced and balanced manner. First, there is definitely something to be said about learning to focus solely on the things that you can control and letting go of the rest. We would save ourselves from a great deal of stress and anxiety, from much needless discomfort in our lives, if we quit worrying about the things that we can't control. Second, as I stated in my podcast episode on the way of contentment, we would benefit greatly from learning to be content with what we have, and even learning to be content with our lot or our position in life. Instead of constantly desiring what we don't have, we should strive to find enjoyment in what we do have. Third, there is also something to be said about accepting the key choices and formative decisions that we've made throughout our lives, and living into them and making the most of them. Instead of moving backwards and living in the past, consumed by regret and always obsessing about what might have been or what could have been, move forward in your life and live in the present, in the reality and culmination of your choices and your decisions. Fourth, as I just mentioned, in a highly sensitive and easily offended society, we would do well to develop tougher skin, to become more callous to the words, actions, and opinions of others, to be less affected by the insults and slights of others. Finally, the Stoics were absolutely right. We should value character over reputation. One is fickle and fleeting, the other echoes into eternity. Now that we've looked at some commendable aspects of Stoic philosophy, let me list some personal criticisms and possible corrections. First, emotionally distancing yourself from people that you hold dear may indeed shield you from the depths of grief but it will also shield you from the heights of love. Such a defensive act can prevent you from experiencing life's lows, but it can also prevent you from experiencing life's highs. Second, there is something almost inhumane or life-denying about being so dispassionate, detached, and unemotional. There's also something unloving about this. One could argue that to be unmoved by and indifferent towards others is a form of hate. It is to lack compassion for your fellow man or woman. Third, the fatalism of Stoicism can easily lead to defeatism. It can rob people of hope. There's nothing wrong with having dreams and believing that things in life can change for the better. The redemptive providence of the biblical God stands in contrast to Stoic fatalism. Whereas determinism holds us captive to the bondage of past-present causation, making us slaves to our past, victims of a recurring and repressive causal chain, the God of religious history opens us up to a novel future. This God gives us a hopeful and salvific destiny rather than a quite possibly hopeless, fatalistic, and nihilistic destiny. Fourth, and this might sound kind of harsh, but Stoicism can be criticized as possessing a loser's mentality, or as being a loser's philosophy. I don't mean loser in a pejorative sense, but I do mean it in a real sense. What I mean is that Stoicism is a good philosophy for slaves, or for prisoners, or for people who have been shipwrecked, or for those who have been banished from their homeland. That's because people like this are, at least in some sense, forced to resign themselves to fate and to accept their lot in life. And this can allow people who face severe hardship to find some semblance of peace in a lousy situation. But for those who have not been snake-bitten with misfortune throughout their lives, I'm not so sure that Stoic philosophy is always as useful. Fifth, Stoicism can also be regarded as a risk-averse philosophy. It can be understood as an overly conservative and fear-based ethic, always attempting to protect itself from disappointment, instead of taking risks, like the risk of love. It can also be seen as an expression of selfishness, always looking out for the safety and protection of number one, sometimes at the expense of others. The God of Christianity is the God of selfless and risk-taking love. This is demonstrated in both the risk of creation and the risk of incarnation, both of which were acts of sacrificial love. When parents decide to have children, they often mirror this self-sacrificial and risk-taking love. Sixth, forgiveness is a far greater way to liberate yourself from the oppressive grasp of your enemies than emotional detachment, callousness, self-focus, and imperviousness are. Forgiveness is more virtuous, more noble, more redemptive, more life-giving, and more loving. Lastly, we are relational creatures. We need the help of other people to succeed. I also believe that we need the help of God to succeed. I mean, I believe that we need God to live, think, act, and feel, let alone to succeed. Stoicism can be too individualistic, and it can underestimate just how dependent we are on things outside of ourselves for our prosperity and our flourishing.